Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. Okay, my guest today is a Los Angeles-based production sound mixer, boom op, and she's also a singer, songwriter, and composer. Please welcome Kim Kylland.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You know how hard it's been to get a sit-down interview with Kim Kylland. It's very hard.
Oh, it's been a busy year for me. I'm grateful to report.
That's awesome. All right, Kim, when you're working as a production sound mixer on set, tell us what's in your audio kit. So give us a rundown of your preferred mixer, recorder, mics, and all the other goodies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a basic setup or one setup. It's kind of just dependent upon the job. The mixer I own is the Zoom F8. I often use the Sound Devices 633. For wireless, I have Sennheiser G3s. I have the Audio-Technica System ATWs, and also using the Electrosonics SMWBs. Yeah, depending on what I'm doing, it will depend what boom I'm bringing, which lav mics I'm choosing. I have my favorites, though, for sure.
Okay. Well, tell us what your favorite shotgun mic is.
If I had to pick one, maybe the 416. It's just so durable and versatile. I like having a mic that I don't have to worry about. I've been shooting a documentary in Acapulco, Mexico since 2016, actually, and it's very humid down there, so that mic has performed really well, and we've brought the Rode NTG 4 Plus as a backup, which also sounds great. We love that mic, so yeah, it kind of just depends.
Okay, well, tell me about the lav mics you like to use.
Yeah, the lav mics. In my kit, I have the Countryman B3s, Sanken 11, the Sennheiser MKE2. So many damn names to remember.
I hear some people call them the Mickey 2s as well.
Oh, that's cute. I'm going to start doing that. Mickey 2.
All right. And what kind of time code do you like?
Oh, for time code, I'm using the little Denicky Locket box. I think it's the JB1.
Okay.
And Tentacle Sync on a couple occasions, too. I have both in my kit.
All right. And what kind of bag do you put all that in?
Right now, it is a new Orca bag that they just sent me. I'm really excited. I'm trying out their new bag that they made for the Zoom F8. I think I'm the first one to get it. It's really cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I also have a big old petrol bag for bigger jobs.
Okay. I have an old petrol bag, too, that I mean, it would be too much to wear.
Yeah, something about it. I like it. Even though it's a little too big sometimes, I have a place for everything.
Battery-wise, what do you use for batteries?
I just switched from the MP1s. For battery distribution, right now I'm using Talent Cell batteries. And they fit really nicely in my bag. They're super small. It's just powering the mixer, and I'm going off battery for the wireless. I'm hopefully going to have a friend customize that a little more for me soon, so multiple things can run on battery, the larger battery, that is.
All right. Well, let's see. The last time we tried to schedule this interview, you had to rush off to New York to work on a couple of projects. So tell me about those.
Oh, yeah. So I worked on a feature film out there this summer, and I booked a commercial job kind of right at the beginning of that period. That was unexpected. I changed my flight to go out there early, and it was like a 6-day shoot, all overnights in Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Oh, that sounds fun.
So that was really interesting. I don't do a lot of overnights, and definitely not in New York City, so it was an experience.
Yeah.
Really good crew, though.
Can you talk a little bit about the project and what it was about?
So I can say that it's for a large security firm.
Okay.
They're launching something. There's a lot of NDAs on that job.
Right.
But it's a fun ad. When it comes out, I'm definitely going to share it.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the audio setup and how you were miking everybody and booming or what.
So yeah, I boomed every shot. Each shot was fairly tight, luckily. But we had a couple wide shots where a car was rolling up and rolling out. And in that case, I used a lot of plant mics. And I used some of the DPA 4060s, and I love those. I think that may be one of my favorite lav mics. But I'm maybe partial because I'm a musician and I've used them for a long time.
All right. Well, where did you put the plant mics in the car?
It's dependent upon the scene. One in particular, I remember we did them kind of along the window edge because the person was speaking out of the car to someone at a bus stop, and it was the perfect placement for them. But, we did all the really normal things too, like the sun visor and, yeah, the dashboard. Luckily, a lot of this was shot in darkness, and the way it was lit, it just wasn't very concentrated on the dashboard or any pieces like that, so I got to hide a little bit in the dark.
Yeah, that's nice when you don't have to worry about ultra hiding everything.
I mic'd a car, that feature that I was talking about that I did right after this commercial. There were a couple car scenes. It was a very important feature of the film because it was a road trip movie, and it was a huge old van. There was a hole in the floor. It was very charming. But it had curtains, so I sewed some mics into the curtains. That's the first time I've ever sewn a mic into anything, and it was very fun.
Okay. Now that, I think you're talking about the movie Generation Rex, is that it?
That's correct, yeah.
Well, tell us about it.
Yeah, it's an indie film. It's set in the 90s, has an amazing cast, and I'm not sure what their schedule is for post-production, so I have no idea when it'll be out or what their plans for distribution are.
Okay. So how many people were mic'd up at the same time?
This film was a challenge because there were so many large ensemble scenes. So I think at any given time we had between 5 and 10 people mic'd. So that was definitely challenging and fun. And it was a situation, I didn't know going into it how skeleton the crew was. So I do wish retrospectively that I would have had a boom operator at least, or someone, because it's, as you know, it's hard to mix 8 people and boom.
Yes.
I learned a lot on that shoot.
That's good. Yeah, and that's when the ISO tracks, that's our friend.
Yes, exactly. And I will often do like dual polywave and the mono stereo recording, depending on a situation like that. It was nice to have options, and I think that was the first time ever I used a limiter on one actor. I like mixing, that's part of the joy of being in that space and feeling out the environment and really observing the talent. But this guy he had a booming voice, and I had a boom in my hand. So that was a disastrous recipe.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd used the limiter on that, the F8, but it was decent.
So you were both outside and inside when you were lots of different types of locations and in cars and...
Yes. A lot of different locations. We had quite a few company moves in the first week too, and a majority of it was actually shot at a house in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, which it sounds nice when I describe it to people and say, oh, the whole cast and crew were staying together in this big house. But it was also the location. So, you went a little bit stir crazy.
Well, when it comes to wiring up talent, do you have expendables that you like to use?
I do. I have some stuff, like very recently, actually, I bought vampire clips, which I had never used before. I did a shoot. It's a promo spot for the new It movie, and it's airing on MTV. It involves some of their cast from a reality show that I can't say yet. I think this should be out next week, though, so just look for it. But while I was miking that talent, they were so amazed that I was using all these sticky, furry things. Like, they had never seen anything like that. And I was like, but aren't you guys on a television show? Don't you do this all the time? And they're like, yeah, but they just stick a vampire clip on us. And I guess I had seen these things, but never used them. And they're kind of fun. I used them on the last couple jobs I was on. I like them.
When I do use those, I always tell the actor or whatever, look, it's got a little pin in here. Be careful. It might stick you.
Yeah. Sometimes I put a little bit of moleskin or some kind of medical tape over that part just to give it a little more spacing between the actor's skin. It's not a perfect system, but it's helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I use a lot of Rycoat products, Hide-A-Mic, Ursa straps, I think are some of my favorite straps to use when miking talent.
All right. Any particular adhesives that you like?
I use a lot of double stick tape, both the super stick and top stick. I have a bunch of different sizes cut down for different quick applications. I was at a workshop recently at True Audio, and I guess they're in Burbank, California. They're a great store. They had the representatives from both Ursa straps and Hide-A-Mic do a little lav mic technique workshop, and I learned some cool stuff, some really fun. It was like an adhesive that you almost paint on the actor's skin if they have a hairy chest, and it creates a perfectly smooth bonding surface. I can't for the life of me remember what it's called.
Is that the one they spray on?
No, it's like if you go into the doctor to get a shot and they open the little alcohol swab pack and it looks exactly like that. That's what it reminded me of. But it was sort of an adhesive, but it was like a bonding gel. Yeah, so I'll send you the information for that. I have some somewhere. I can't remember the name.
It's always good to hear something new and try some new stuff.
Right, exactly.
All right. Tell us a little bit about working on the documentary Stateless.
Yeah, Stateless has been a big part of my life for years now. And that is actually how I got my start in location audio. I come from the studio music world. I was a touring musician for most of my life and eventually started writing music for commercials, which led me to doing a degree in music composition and studio recording in Oakland, California at Mills College. But that's where I met my partner, Todd. He is a filmmaker and has been doing this a very long time. He was embarking on this new exciting doc project and needed a sound mixer. And I said, well, I know how to mix bands and music. And I had a little experience actually from college using the sound devices. I think it was a 702 we had. So it felt weirdly like a very natural transition. He was very patient and helped me learn some of the gear, and I'm familiar with mic placement and signal flow and things like that. So it felt great to do this, and I've never stopped since. So it was 2016. So I'm fairly new still, I guess.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit about, I guess, what it was like on set and some of the miking challenges you had to deal with.
Yeah, wow, this is different than any project I've been a part of. It's, as you know, documentaries are very fast-paced. There's no take two. So there were certain situations where we only had a few minutes with someone and couldn't mic them, so that was all boom. Or if we got someone for a sit-down interview, they weren't super comfortable with being mic'd, so we did just kind of leave it visible. We weren't super precious about whether or not we could see the mics. But when we had the time and when it allowed, I loved using a proper technique to mic someone. But it's a very warm city, Acapulco, Mexico. So everybody was wearing very thin clothing, a lot of bathing suits, weirdly. So that's, it can be a challenge. I have some great clips that Hide-A-Mic makes. They're, I guess they're theater clips. They go in an actor's hair and take the lavalier mic down to their hairline. So that's a nice little fun tool to use if you can get away with it when somebody is wearing a bikini.
All right. Any other particular challenges or?
Particular challenges. I guess the humidity is a challenge. Battery life tends to be a little different down there. It's so hot and moist constantly. So I tended to charge things more, switch out batteries a lot more often. And I've never worked in a tropical climate before, so I don't know if that's characteristic of doing that. But we have also been shooting this documentary with a lot of people who are self-proclaimed anarchists and are very against the police and the government. So there have been some situations that were a little scary. And, you don't want to be walking around with a huge boom and things like that. So we tried to be very discreet at times, like either just laving somebody or plant miking if we can.
Huh. I hear a doggy barking.
Oh, do you hear that? Yeah, my neighbors have these beautiful dogs. They all get each other going. I pulled out the broadcast mic in case something like that happened, but you're still getting some dog. Something recently that's been happening, when I've been using, which mic was this? I think this was the Cos 11. There was an actor I was working with, and I could hear her heartbeat so loudly. And I know that happens a little bit, but it was the biggest, brightest, beautiful heartbeat sound I've ever heard. And I tried so many placements with her. We eventually had to put some layers there.
Wow. Yeah, usually I hear it when they're nervous. If they're extremely nervous,
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
like, oh my gosh, I can hear your heart. But
it's kind of gorgeous. I like it.
yeah. But yeah, there's been a few times it was like, well, why am I hearing theirs? I mean, they're professionals. This is nothing to be nervous about. But yeah, I guess sometimes it's that
right.
placement. Maybe we could diagnose. Like, have you seen a physician lately?
Exactly. It sounds a little fast.
Yeah, I'm hearing a little, what's it, mitral valve prolapse or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes people don't believe me when I say that these are very sensitive mics. Like, you're everybody's worst enemy on set in a tropical climate when you're like, sorry, we have to turn the AC off.
Oh yeah.
And they don't understand, but I just say, well, yeah, I can kind of hear your heartbeat too. It's really sensitive.
Yeah. Wow. I was doing an interview in a hotel here in Florida, and it was we had to shut it's the window air conditioning that hotels usually have, the older ones. And,
yes.
And we had to shut that off.
So loud.
And it was so hot. I'm sitting over there, sweat's running down I was to the side of our guest that we were interviewing, and I was waiting to see a trickle of, go down his forehead, but I was like in a pool. I was like, this is crazy. But it was so noisy.
Oh my God. I'm so used to that by now. I feel like it doesn't get any easier, but it's like you're almost inevitably going to be sweaty when you're working.
Yeah. Especially outside, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's good that you didn't have any mic issues, though, in a hot and humid climate, so that's good.
Yeah, we got really lucky with that. I don't know. I take pretty good care of my gear, even in situations where we're running and going so fast. I try to wrap them up in soft things and not bend cables and be really communicative with people. Like, please don't take that off yourself. So we've been lucky.
Yeah, and I know some people like to put a little loop in the lav mic, but I don't do that just because every now and then somebody wants to take it off themselves and they grab it and they just pull it right on through and it tightens that knot right up and you're like, no.
Yeah. I don't know what that's about. People just never get don't take it off yourself.
You're in the process of getting there and they're like, oh yeah.
Like, no.
Well, you also worked on a few episodes of the TV series Adulting. Can you tell us about those?
Oh yeah, those gals were really nice. I only did, I want to say, one episode. We shot over a period of 3 days for that one episode, and it was really fun, but it's another low budget scenario where you have those challenges, like you can hear the neighbor's AC and you can hear the upstairs neighbors walking and the neighbor's dog, and it's very hard to control a sound environment like that.
Now, was that a reality TV series?
No, that was a scripted narrative series.
Okay.
Yeah, I would call it more of a web series, but it was some really lovely people and great crew. It was really fun.
Okay. And just wiring them up as normal?
That was pretty standard. And it was 2 actors all 3 days, so I didn't have to really do much swapping. I mean, some adjusting and taking things on and off during lunch, but that part was fairly nice. Occasionally there was an outfit change and we had to make some adjustments, certain clothing being noisier than other, or telling them, sadly, we need to lose a necklace that's very jangly.
Now, are there any other favorite projects that you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed?
Every project is so different, and that's what I love about this line of work, is just it's fresh every time you step onto set. So I think I have a lot of favorite projects for a lot of different reasons. Even the stressful ones too. There's some kind of fun and good learning to be found in there. Like the MTV thing I just worked on, we filmed in a fun house. I've never done anything like that before, so there was some interesting sound challenges working with their production team, trying to get things turned off and kind of bypassed and things like that. Just really a lot of noisy machines. But I was really impressed with the post-production team. They took some of those elements and really worked it into the sound design. They did a great job.
We had a recent listener that asked, do you reset your mixer at the start of each new project?
I do. I mean, I like to get to the set early enough to be able to do that. Sometimes I know it's going to be a really hectic, like if it's a dock situation, I'll prep the night before with my machine. But yeah, I like to reset. Sometimes you have different routing you want to reset. There'll be Comtex one day and not another. Sometimes you want the boom in a different place and different loves. And I think I'm saying this before every answer. I'm sorry, but it really does depend on the job. Sometimes those presets you have, they're going to work great, and other times it takes a little bit of resetting.
So how do you handle the work and personal life balance?
There just is no balance. It's easy. Yeah. No, I own a production company with my partner, Todd Schramke. We're called Bird Murmur. And Todd is an amazing cinematographer and editor. He's actually been training me a little bit as a camera operator too, so it's been fun to get more of that perspective, and I think it allows me to work better with camera teams to know about their job. But when I say there's not much balance, I think it's a chosen path because we started this company that it's our own thing, and we're always kind of talking about it and mulling things over, and whether it's like falling asleep at night and having a conversation about the day or over dinner, or right after a job. Like I think we both really love what we do, so it doesn't really feel like we need a break. But then, there are days where we're like, okay, no more talk about production stuff. We're just going to go to a yoga class today and watch a movie. But there you go. We're watching movies on days we're not making them.
Well, that's good. All right. So you've also toured around the world as a singer, songwriter, performing on stage. So how has being a musician influenced the way you record sound on set?
Yeah, I've done a lot of touring. I've spent a lot of time in studios, a lot of times behind a computer mixing music. And I think it has really helped me and informed my location sound recording because it really teaches you to listen in a very specific way. You pay attention to things like spatialization, little noises that no one else hears that you hear very, very much. They are very different, but I think that they really complement each other. And I was lucky that the school I went to when I did my degree in composition, it was not like going to a conservatory where you're very focused on one discipline. You were the composer, the conductor, the engineer, and the post-sound mixer. It was very hands-on. So one day you'd be composing a piece and discussing it in class with professors, and the next day, they would bring in some people from the San Francisco Symphony to play it in the concert hall. And it was usually me setting up all the mics for that session and getting the sound devices prepped. And then, just working through things on that stage with the musicians in real time, bringing something from a MIDI composition to this big, beautiful hall and working through it with these amazing players. And they listen in very specific ways too. So I think it's all about listening to them and learning from them as well. It's been that way in location sound for me as well. I've been really lucky to have some good mentors, some really great friends who have helped me learn and are always there when I'm on set and panicking and like, well, I don't know what's going on, help me. Specifically, I think you've interviewed all three of them so far. There's Ben Kylland, James Nolan, Chris Howland. They've been hugely helpful to me.
Oh, wonderful. And thanks for referring me to them, because that was great.
Yeah, of course. I got more for you. Don't worry.
All right. Well, when it comes to composing a song for film or a commercial, what's your workflow? How do you kind of, a client wants to hire you and you sit down and what's that first meeting like when you're talking about what what they need, what they want?
That first meeting is usually really fun because it's all about asking them what they envision and what they feel. And, it's just a purely creative process where anything can be said. And sometimes people come in with examples too, like I want it to sound like this composer or this band, or I want it to sound sad, or I want it to make your heart race. So there's a lot of talking, some listening as well, sometimes listening through examples. But then I usually go back and put together, I mean, it depends too on the client, I guess, on the job. But usually for me, my workflow involves me going home and working something out, usually in a DAW like Logic, just something really simple, using MIDI instruments and creating kind of a soundscape for them, a sound environment, or even something as simple as getting some sounds together, picking from libraries and getting a melody together and just sending it off and getting feedback. So it's a really collaborative process. I think people don't realize, or maybe it's different for different composers. I know some who really like to just be given the reins early on and just be trusted wholeheartedly. I really enjoy the collaborative back and forth, especially on commercial work, because you have so many people involved. But yeah, it starts in a DAW and eventually, hopefully, goes to a soundstage in a studio and gets recorded.
That brings up a question for me because I come from doing a lot of commercial work, and sometimes the commercial is finished and the client loves it, and there's no revisions. And then there's the clients that they micromanage everything from start to finish. And sometimes, I mean, I would never say this, but you want to say, well, maybe you should do it because because they have an opinion about everything. And so I don't know what percentage. And sometimes the clients that are spending the most money are the ones that trust you the most, and they just want you to do your thing.
Yeah,
but the
from
ones
my
that
experience.
Yeah, so I didn't know, is there a percentage of, and there's some you present and they're like, I love it. And then there's, we go through 10 revisions on the others. So it's an interesting world that we live in as creatives.
It is, yeah. And I think those people who, some would call them like the nightmare client, there's 10 revisions and they're still not happy. And, I think those people are in a way like a lesson in communication for me. I feel like I have become a better communicator. I've become more patient through processes like this, just really listening to what they want. I feel like everybody really wants to be heard, especially in a creative process. And even if you could kind of just let them know you're listening to their feedback. And sometimes that's enough, weirdly. You have to reach people on a really personal level sometimes, and that can be very hard with some people. But it's also a beautiful thing. This whole creative process, we have the privilege of living in this world where you talk about these very deep emotions and what you're trying to achieve with a certain sound or mood of music, and that's very special. I'm very lucky to be working and doing this.
That's cool. Well, if somebody wanted to listen to some of your personal music, what's the best way for people to find that online?
Yeah, I'm updating my personal website right now, but it is still up. It's just kind of a landing page. You can go to kimkylland.com. I believe I also have my last EP on SoundCloud. I perform music under the name Kylland. It's my last name, Kylland. And my partner Todd is also in that project with me.
Okay. Well, you grew up in California, but you also spent time in Norway. So what was that like growing up?
I did, yeah. It's very different than California. But I feel lucky that I grew up in both places and traveled a lot very young. I got to meet a lot of different types of people, and again, back to the communication thing, having multiple languages, I think it broadens your ability to speak to people, but both literally and figuratively. I just realized how that sounded. You can actually speak to more people. But yeah, it's they're very different nature-wise. California, in Southern California, where I spent my childhood, was very beachy, very laid back. Norway is very cold in most months. Yeah, and it's very, you don't have the shifting darkness in California. So it's very different. And as a composer, it's been really wonderful to have those two places to bounce back and forth from. Kind of puts you in a different mood composing in November in Norway than it does in July in California.
That's good. Yeah, communication, I think that's one of the more challenging things or most challenging things that we have to deal with.
Absolutely.
And having two different languages, I think, see, my wife is from Brazil originally, and so she speaks Portuguese. And so,
cool.
especially in the beginning, I would say something to her, and then she would, kind of like, she didn't understand, so I'd have to explain it differently. And then we would kind of work around and she would get it. So I think over time, it's a good skill. Some people don't have the patience for that. Like, I can't talk to this person. They don't understand anything. So
absolutely.
It is, but it is. If we can communicate better with people, I think, ultimately it kind of makes our job in life easier as well as, on set.
Yeah. And that is really our business, is communicating stories, whether it's through sound or music or picture. It's all about working with this massive team of people to achieve this one end result that the viewer can watch or listen to and just be completely transported. So you're very right. I feel like when you say that communication is an important part of this business.
Some people are like, I don't like to talk to people. It's like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah, those are usually, who are those people? They're like the grip department.
Hopefully no grip department is listening.
No, they're great. I'm in awe of those guys. Their job is something I don't understand very well.
I've worked for some smaller companies and we had to wear a lot of hats, so I feel like I've done a lot of everything over time. But yeah, it can be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean that's a really great way to practice. Just being in different departments, doing everything yourself. It's helpful. Like I worked on a doc recently. Both Todd and I have been working on this. Todd is a cinematographer, our ACAM operator, and of course me as a sound mixer. But one of the days we were shooting, I think it was a Santa Barbara triathlon recently. They needed another camera operator, and they had another Canon C300 Mark II, and they were like, "You think you can do it?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. No." But Todd and I spent a couple hours training with it, and it was actually really fun. I mean, I don't think I'm going to transition to being a camera operator or anything, but it's nice to have that little bit of knowledge, and you can communicate a little bit differently maybe with a camera person. And plus, it was just fun. It was a totally different way of capturing the story,
Well, that's interesting. Now, you mentioned a few of your mentors, but getting started in the industry, were there one or two that really stood out that helped shape your future in production sound?
Well, growing up, I was a musician, and I definitely looked up to some people in that industry. I was a big fan of Joni Mitchell growing up. She was somebody who played in a lot of open tunings, which is something I do often. She was just very experimental in a way that was very accessible, and I loved that. But as far as location sound, my friends, I feel like, have been my mentors and the people I've looked up to. The people I mentioned, Ben and James and Chris, they're doing amazing work, and they're showing up every day and being a pleasure to be around. And they're always there with a helpful word. So they definitely inspire me a lot. Also, another person I connected with recently, I feel like I'm going to butcher his last name, Agamemnon Andrianos. Yeah, Andrianos. Agamemnon Andrianos. I refer to him as Aggie. It's just easier. But he's also somebody who's very inspiring to me because he's had this very long career, but he is still just so in love with sound and with storytelling, and he just has this energy. Like when you meet him and talk to him, he's got these bright eyes and he's quick and intelligent. He and his wife have been in the business for a very long time, and they still just have this excitement that you don't find in everybody, this passion, I guess. And he's also very into physical fitness, which I think is a really important part of life, but especially our job is very physical. People think you just sit all day, but especially being a boom operator, you're not sitting. You're moving around, sweating. And there's been days where I have stood in a way that was careless or uncomfortable, and my lower back is killing me the next day. And I realize it's so important to take care of my body so I can keep working.
That's good. Yeah, I'm trying to remember one of our guests, I think it was Steve Sada, who worked on House of Cards and Veep, but he said there were times where they would take breaks, the crew would, and they'd stretch out and they'd do
that's
some
great.
things. Because, it can be exhausting. Yeah, sometimes you're like, I haven't sat down in like 5 hours. You finally sit down and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
I know what you mean. I worked on a short recently called Sunny Pomona. It is beautiful. I cannot wait for that to come out. It was shot in an apartment, one long scene, 2 actors, and it is so moving. But before we started shooting, the crew, who were all a lot of friends and knew each other, they did this like stretch circle, and they were like, "Sorry, you're gonna walk into some hippie stuff here," but I loved it. It was nice to get to know each other, and we spoke a little bit, hanging out and going around and talking about our week and stretching, and it felt good to connect with your body in that way before putting on all the gear and just going for 13 hours.
Wow. All right. Well, tell us about your worst on-set experience.
I do feel like something good has come out of most of the bad experiences I've had on set. If for no other reason, I know what questions to ask before I take a job. Maybe one of the worst experiences I've had was doing what is it called? One of those 48-hour film festival things. This was when I was still sort of newer, and I guess I am still new, but much newer than I am now. And you're not supposed to pay people on those crews, but they did pay me a little bit. It was just poorly planned. And I've worked on many things where the planning either wasn't there or went out the window in the heat of the moment, but I think it's all in how you handle it. And whether that crew has the ability to communicate and work together, and maybe if they've gotten enough sleep that week. It just was one of those sets where there was a lot of yelling and screaming. And I am glad to say I put that behind me and will never do some kind of film festival 48-hour challenge ever again. Maybe with friends, maybe with a group of friends. It was a little hellish.
I've been there too. I think, they're great learning experiences, but yeah, there's sometimes, especially when I've done it, I had more experience than most of the people involved, and so, but then I kind of resigned myself. My job here is to do the audio. I can't fix the story. I can't,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
that kind of thing. So I'm going to do my best part,
Yep.
With the part I can control. But yeah, it does. It can be very frustrating, and it's not, sometimes it turns into, an ego fest versus,
which is so disappointing.
yeah,
I know.
it's like, I know you're the director. That's
Right.
But
if you have to say it, it's probably
Right.
not a good sign.
Exactly. Let's work on getting the best product we can do here, and not,
because that's what filmmaking is. It is a team of people.
yeah.
It's so important to have a good crew around you. I'm realizing that more and more as I work. If you're around great people for 10 to 12 hours a day, it makes the day so different.
That is true. Yeah, everybody talks about too, having a great crew and everything comes together and everybody's working together and helping each other. That's like the best versus fighting with different departments.
Yeah, and it happens. Tempers flare. It's an environment in which everything's very time sensitive and there's a lot at play. So I understand if there's some outbursts here and there, but then you just get over it, move on.
Exactly.
You're better friends afterward.
That's right. Let's hug.
Yeah, but I feel lucky to work with the people I work with. I'm constantly getting connected through people that I've done work for to another person. Those word of mouth recommendations have been my best jobs, I think. I'm working a lot right now with the English film director, Lucy Walker. She's a documentary director.
Okay.
So I'm working on 2 projects with her, and very crazy, high-strung documentary environments, but also very fun, very different challenges every day.
All right. Well, have you ever forgotten any equipment on your way to set?
Yes. Not very often though, thank God. I'm kind of like a meticulous packer and like list maker, and I'm very organized. I love organization. It sometimes drives my partner Todd a little crazy. I think I forgot my boom pole once, but luckily Todd was dropping me off at this shoot, and I called him and I was like, "I'm sorry, I think you're probably halfway home by now, but you need to come back." And I guess that's not the worst thing to forget. I mean, I was like in panic mode. I was thinking like, what am I going to tape the mic to? Am I going to tape it to a broomstick? Like, just trying in my mind. Like, have you seen that Instagram account, Shitty Rigs?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was like, that was in my mind. Like, what am I going to do to make this work? But he brought it back. Yeah, I think recently I was on one of these dock situations. We had like a base camp and then went down a hill to interview somebody, and I got there, I had everything, and I realized I didn't have my headphones. So I had to go back up. I had to go back to base camp. Yeah, it was a little embarrassing. But we had time.
Yeah, that's the best when you have time. I'll be right back.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to run to the bathroom. But now I check for that every time, like in a ridiculous way. So I'll never do it again.
That's good. Well, if you could start all over in production sound, would you do anything different?
Maybe not worry so much about what gear I have. Not stress so hard that I'm not, showing up with the most expensive top of the line gear. And that's not to say I don't love sound devices and electrosonics. I mean, there's a reason why those are industry standards. They're amazingly engineered. The companies are great. But yeah, I would say just not worrying so much about gear, learning and focusing with what you have. I mean, that is eventually what I did out of necessity. I didn't have a lot of money early on, so I couldn't just go buy whatever I wanted. And using like G3s, for example, I've now modified the antennas, and I have a different longer range antenna that I could use for a different situation. And that was all stuff that I learned through trial and error. I don't think I would have learned some of the stuff I know now if it weren't for my more challenging gear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, having gear, I mean, of course, yeah, we'd all love to have the best gear in the beginning, but
Sure.
I think, learning on gear that maybe is a little more, I say, sensitive, or it doesn't have the headroom or whatever, I think it does make us better.
Right.
Because you learn to be like, ooh, I can't push this one that far, but I could. But
Exactly.
then when you get the better gear, you're like, oh, it's got a little more, some more bells and whistles, and you can push it a little bit harder or whatever, and without clipping. So
Yeah, exactly.
But it's true. I think it's good because I think, there were in the beginning. I was trying to get a job and hook up with this one production company, and they were, oh no, we if you don't have this, then we can't hire you.
Oh, yeah, that's totally happened to me. And that's fine. I mean, I don't know. It definitely bothered me the first time it happened to me. But at the same time, if they're not going to hire me over a piece of gear they think they need, maybe I don't want to work with them anyway. It's, what is that saying? It's the archer, not the arrows. You could have the nicest gear, everything top of the line. You can have a sound devices that is like, you could have, what's the new one? The Scorpio.
Yeah.
But if you don't have somebody who knows what they're doing, it's not going to matter what you have.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on the person as well.
Well, it's the same, having the best instrument. I can have this really nice guitar.
Right. I was thinking about that too.
Les Paul or whatever. But if you can't play it,
it's
no good. And a student line instrument in the hands of a professional sounds amazing.
I couldn't agree more. I learned to play guitar actually on the most janky piece of wood and strings ever. I don't even know what brand it was. It might have been one of those old Harmony guitars from the 60s. But the action was way too high, and I just stuck with it and, had bleeding fingers for a long time. And then when I moved to a better guitar, I was like, why does this feel so easy to play? You know, my hand strength was pretty good at that point. Playing this little dinky guitar religiously, and then I built up the hand strength maybe quicker than I would have if I had a brand new gorgeous Martin guitar, which I now have, thank God.
Fantastic. Well, if there was somebody that was thinking about getting into production sound, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say do it. I would say if you want someone to talk to, call me. I love it. I really do. It's a constantly changing world too, like so many industries that work with technology. So it's a fun challenge in keeping up with that as well. But I would say if you're thinking about getting into production sound, don't be afraid to ask questions to your peers and the people around you who are doing what you want to do. Reach out to them and just, be polite and ask questions and be open to their feedback and make a lot of mistakes and don't worry about it. But make them on, student films.
And when you've done your however many 48-hour film festivals and you've decided, I think I'm good.
Right.
Know when to walk away.
I would say there's definitely going to be those jobs first, though. I'm not above any job. I still take things that are poorly planned and maybe not the exact type of environment I'd love to be working in, but there's something to be learned from everything. Like if you really want to be doing this, you will just push through those things and keep going.
That's good. Yeah, I work with a friend, and he's always asking for the friends and family discount.
Oh, Jesus.
And so we do that. And but like I said, he's a friend, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I do those from time to time myself.
Yeah, we all do. You're right. I think there's ways you can make that work and not feel terrible. Keep the days a little shorter. Get some really good crafty.
Exactly. Well, Kim, as we start to wrap things up, I appreciate you taking the time. I know we finally got the chance to work this out and with the schedules.
I appreciate you. This was really fun. Thanks for having me on finally.
Awesome. Well, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you online?
Probably through my website. KimKylland.com. There is a little form there, I believe. Let me see. Yep, you can add your name and email address and a message, and that goes directly to my email. I'm also on Instagram. I post a lot on there. My Instagram handle is @KyllandMusic, so you can message me on there or something too.
And then you have birdmurmur.com.
Right, yeah. So that I should also say that's my company. It's birdmurmur.com. birdmurmur.
All right.
.com.
Cool. All right. I want to say thanks to Kim Kylland for being on the show today.
Thanks so much.
And a big thanks to all of our listeners out there. If you'd like us to discuss a particular topic, please send us an email at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. We would love for you to subscribe and leave us a comment. We're available on Apple Podcast, and for Android users, check out Google Podcasts. Also, we're on Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.